The day my son Daniel told me he never wanted to speak to me again was an ordinary Tuesday in October. Isn't that how it always goes? The moments that shatter your world arrive without warning, on unremarkable days when you're wearing your second-best sweater and thinking about what to make for dinner. I'm Michael Harrison, 55 years old, and 3 years ago, my only child decided I no longer deserved a place in his life. I need space. Don't contact me again. Those words stare back at me from my phone screen at least once a week when I torture myself by rereading our last exchange. 11 words that demolish the relationship I'd spent 27 years building. 11 words that still echo in my head during those quiet moments before sleep. Claims me. I should start by saying I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes, plenty of them. My marriage to Daniel's mother, Catherine, fell apart when he was 15. The divorce was messy, as they often are, but I thought we'd managed to shield Daniel from the worst of it. Catherine got primary custody, which made sense given my unpredictable hours as a private investigator. But I saw Daniel every other weekend, called him twice a week, and never missed a school event or birthday. As he grew older and went off to college, our relationship changed, as parent-child relationships do. Phone calls became less frequent, visits more sporadic. But I never worried. It seemed like the natural progression of things, a busy young man building his own life. Even after he graduated and took a job in finance 3 states away, we still managed monthly calls and holiday visits. Until that Tuesday 3 years ago, I'd called him to discuss Thanksgiving plans. He was 27 then, recently engaged to Melissa, a bright, ambitious lawyer I'd met only once, but had liked immediately. I thought perhaps they could visit for the holiday, or maybe I could fly out to them. "Dad, I can't do this anymore," he said, his voice flat in a way I'd never heard before. "Do what? If the timing doesn't work, we can figure something else out," I replied, confused by his tone. "No, I mean this. Us. I've been thinking about it for a long time. I need space. Don't contact me again." The phone went silent for a moment, and I thought maybe we'd been disconnected. "Daniel, are you still there? I have to go. Please respect my wishes." And that was it. The call ended, and so, apparently, did my relationship with my son. I called back immediately, no answer. I texted, no response. I emailed, nothing. After a week of this, I drove the 400 miles to his apartment, only to have the door closed in my face after he saw who was standing on his doorstep. "Daniel, please," I begged through the closed door. "Whatever I've done, let me fix it." "Go away, Michael," he called back. Not even Dad anymore, but Michael. As if we were strangers, or I'll call the police. I stood there for another 20 minutes, alternating between pleading and silence, before finally retreating to my car, where I sat watching his building until well past midnight, hoping for what I don't know. A miracle, perhaps. In the months that followed, I sent letters handwritten, because somehow that seemed more sincere than emails. I sent birthday and Christmas gifts, which were returned unopened. I reached out to Melissa only to discover from her coldly professional email that they had postponed their engagement indefinitely and that she couldn't discuss Daniel with me. I called Catherine, my ex-wife, who claimed ignorance. "He hasn't mentioned anything to me," she said, her voice carrying that same slight edge it had acquired during our divorce proceeding. "Maybe you should respect his boundary, Michael." But how could I? What father simply accepts being cut out of his child's life without explanation? I sank into a depression so profound that my business suffered. As a private investigator, I'd built a solid reputation for being thorough and discreet, qualities that wealthy clients and nasty divorces or corporations dealing with suspected embezzlement valued highly. But now I was missing detail, forgetting appointments, losing clients. My sister Jane was the one who finally pulled me back from the edge. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, took one look at the unwashed dishes, the stubble that had evolved into an unkempt beard, and the collection of empty whiskey bottles, and declared she was moving in temporarily. "This has gone on long enough," she said, throwing open curtains that hadn't seen movement in weeks. "You can't help Daniel if you're destroying yourself." "He doesn't want my help," I muttered, squinting against the sudden light. "He doesn't want anything from me." Jane sat beside me on the couch that had been doubling as my bed. "Maybe not. but you're still his father, and something is very wrong here. The Daniel I know wouldn't cut you off without reason. Either he's in some kind of trouble, or someone has poisoned him against you. Either way, sitting here marinating in self-pity and Johnny Walker isn't going to solve anything. She was right, of course. Jane, 5 years my junior and infinitely wiser in matters of the heart, had always been my voice of reason. She'd been close to Daniel Toothafun Ant, who snuck him candy and covered for his teenage indiscretions. Jane, I said, a terrible thought occurring to me. Does he still talk to you? Her silence was answer enough. He cut you off too. I was incredulous. Jane and Daniel had always been thick as thieves. Not exactly, she hedged. He responds to my texts, but only with one-word answers. He declined my invitation to Christmas last year, said he was busy with work. She paused. I thought it was just me he was avoiding. That was the moment something shifted inside me. One person cutting ties might be explained away a misunderstanding, a perceived slight, a need for independence. But two people, that suggested something more calculated. When did this start with you? I asked. Jane thought for a moment. Around the same time, I guess. It was gradual though. He just became less available, less present. I sat up straighter, my investigator's mind finally engaging after months of emotional fog. Who does he still talk to? Your kids? No. My girls say he's ghosted them on social media. Jane has twin daughters, now in college, but he's still close with Catherine, from what I gather, and her brother, Robert Mayek, the man who had always made his disdain for me abundantly clear, who had actively encouraged Catherine to leave me years ago, the man who now, apparently, had more access to my son than I did. I think, I said slowly, it's time I remembered what I do for a living. Jane looked puzzled. What do you mean? I stood up, feeling purposeful for the first time in months. I find answers for people. Jane. I uncover truths. I ran a hand through my disheveled hair. Maybe it's time I took on myself as a client. That day marked the beginning of my investigation into what I would come to call the case of the vanished son. Little did I know then just how deep the deception went, or how many lives had been damaged by it. But I was finally ready to find out, no matter where the evidence led. And I would soon discover that the path back to my son was littered with lies so convincing, even I had started to believe them. My name is Michael Harrison, and for the past 3 years, I've lived with a hole in my heart the exact shape of my son. After that devastating lunch, I refused to accept David's decision as final. I couldn't. What father would? I started writing letters, not emails, that could be easily deleted, or text messages that could be blocked but actual. Handwritten letters on cream-colored stationery I bought specially for this purpose. The first letter was 12 pages long, my handwriting growing increasingly erratic as I poured my heart onto the paper. I explained everything, how his mother left me for my brother-in-law Robert, how I fought for joint custody, how I worked 2 jobs to pay for his education. I included dates, details, memories that only he and I shared, camping trips where we counted stars, Sunday mornings making blueberry pancakes shaped like dinosaurs, the time I taught him to ride a bike and he crashed into Mrs. Peterson's rose. I sealed that envelope with a trembling hand and dropped it into the mailbox outside his apartment building, my heart hammering with hope. No response came. The second letter was more controlled, more measured. 8 pages of clear, precise writing where I asked him to simply hear me out. I suggested meeting with a family therapist, a neutral third party who could help us navigate this chasm between us. That letter, like the first, disappeared into silence. By the 5th letter, I was down to 2 pages. By the 10th, just 1. The 20th was little more than a note. I love you, son. Always have, always will. Each one met the same fate. Unanswered, unacknowledged, like bottles thrown into an ocean with no shore. I didn't just write letters. I sent birthday gifts that were returned unopened, Christmas presents that came back marked refused. I stood outside his office building once, just hoping to glimpse him from a distance. The restraining order made that a risky proposition, but some pain cuts deeper than legal consequence. He doesn't want anything to do with you, Laura told me the one time I called her, desperate for any connection to my son. You should respect his wishes and leave him alone. Her voice was smooth as glass and just as cutting. There was something underneath it, though something like satisfaction. What did you tell him about me? I demanded. What lies have you been feeding him all these years? Only the truth, Michael. That you're selfish, that you're manipulative, that you care more about your own feelings than his. That's not true, and you know it. Her laugh was like ice cracking. It doesn't matter what I know, it only matters what David believes. She hung up then, leaving me with the bitter taste of helplessness. After a year of unanswered letters, I began to wonder if David was reading them at all. Maybe Laura was intercepting them somehow. Maybe David had given instructions to throw away anything with my name on it. That's when I noticed something odd in my bank statement. For years, I'd been putting money into a savings account for David Habit. I started when he was born, even after the divorce, through college and beyond. I kept adding to it every month. Not a fortune, but steady deposits meant to help him someday with a house down payment or whatever he might need. The account had been untouched for years. David never mentioned it, and I was saving it for when he really needed it. But now, I saw withdrawals. Small at first, then larger. Someone was emptying the account, and it wasn't me. Had David discovered the account? Was he using the money? Somehow, I doubted it. If he wanted nothing to do with me, why would he touch money he knew came from me? Unless he didn't know it came from me. That thought hit me like a freight train at 3 a.m., jolting me awake from an already restless sleep. What if Laura had somehow gained access to the account and was taking the money while telling David something entirely different about its source? I'd been a private investigator for 25 years before retiring. Finding the truth was once my profession, my calling. Now, it might be my salvation. The next morning, I called the bank. They couldn't give me details about who made the withdrawals, privacy policies, and all that, but they confirmed the withdrawals were made in person with proper ID. Someone was using my son's ID to withdraw money from an account I'd set up for him. If it was David himself, why not clean it out all at once? Why these periodic withdrawals? And if it wasn't David, I found myself parked across from my bank the following Thursday, the day when most of the withdrawals had been made, according to the statement. My old surveillance camera was set up discreetly on my dashboard, focused on the bank entrance. At 2:17 p.m., Robert walked through those doors. Robert, my the man who had been married to my sister before he left her for my wife, the man who became my son's stepfather. The man who, apparently, was now helping himself to money meant for my son. I watched him exit 20 minutes later, tucking what looked like cash into his inside jacket pocket, a satisfied smile on his face. Something cold and calculating awoke inside me. The investigator who had once tracked cheating spouses and insurance fraudsters through the concrete jungle of this city. I followed Robert that day, keeping a careful distance. He stopped at a liquor store, then a jewelry shop, then finally at an upscale apartment building I didn't recognize. For the next month, I watched and documented. Every Thursday, the same routine. The bank, various luxury purchases, then that unfamiliar apartment building where he'd stay for exactly 90 minutes before heading back to the home he shared with Laura and, presumably, where my son visited for family gatherings to which I was never invited. It didn't take much digging to discover the apartment belonged to a woman named Cassandra Winters, aged 29, not much older than my son. Robert, at 57, was apparently repeating his pattern. Once a cheater, always a cheater, I thought bitterly. And he was using my son's money meant to secure his future to fund this affair. I had my first piece of concrete evidence that something was wrong in the perfect family picture Laura had painted for our son. But how to use it? How to make David see the truth when he wouldn't even read my letters? That's when I remembered something. David's cousin, Emma, my sister's daughter. She was the only family member who still spoke to me occasionally, though cautiously. Robert was her father, though he'd been largely absent from her life after leaving my sister for Laura. Emma and David had been close as children, but I didn't know if they still kept in touch. I called Emma from a payphone. Old habits die hard, informer PI. Uncle Mike. Her voice was uncertain. Is everything okay? Not really, Emma. I need to talk to you about David and your father. There was a long pause. I don't want to get involved in family drama. I understand, but this isn't about drama. It's about truth. And about money that belongs to David being stolen. Another pause, longer, this time. Then, I'm listening. We met at a quiet cafe, far from any family haunts. Emma had grown into a poised young woman with her mother's eyes and a wariness that broke my heart. I showed her my evidence. Bank statements, photos, a timeline of Robert's activities. "I'm not surprised," she said finally, staring into her untouched coffee. "Dad's always been selfish. Does David ever talk about me?" I asked, trying to keep the desperate hope from my voice. She hesitated. "He believes you abandoned him." That's what Aunt Laura told him, what Dad reinforced. "They've been telling him these stories for years, Uncle Mike, about how you refused to pay child support, how you tried to turn him against his mother, how you chose your new family over him." New family. I never remarried, never had other children. According to them, you have 3 kids with a woman in Arizona. You started a whole new life and forgot about David. I sat there, stunned by the elaborate fiction they'd created. None of that is true. I've spent the last 3 years writing letters David never answers. Emma looked at me with something like pity. "He thinks you're trying to manipulate him." Aunt Laura shows him these expert analyses of your letters, pointing out manipulative language, guilt trips, narcissistic patterns. My head spun. They weren't just intercepting my communications, they were weaponizing them against me. "Will you help me, Emma? Will you help me reach my son?" She twisted her napkin nervously. "I don't know, Uncle Mike, if they found out. They're stealing from him, Emma, and they've stolen me from him with their lies. He deserves the truth, doesn't he?" She nodded slowly. "I'll see what I can do, but I can't promise anything." As we parted ways, she hesitated, then hugged me quickly. "For what it's worth, I never believed the things they said about you. It was a small victory, the first in 3 long years. A tiny crack in the wall that separated me from my son. But I knew that wall was thick, built with bricks of lies, mortared with years of manipulation. I would need more than one ally to break through. I would need irrefutable evidence, and most of all, I would need to find a way to make David willing to see it." That night, I looked at the pile of unsent letters on my desk. Instead of writing another plea destined for the void, I opened a new notebook and wrote a single line: "Operation Truth, how to get my son back." The investigator in me was fully awake now, and he had a case to solve. The day I started Operation Truth, something changed in me. The fog of grief that had clouded my mind for 3 years began to lift, replaced by the sharp clarity I used to feel on my most challenging cases. I transformed my spare bedroom into what my colleagues used to call a war room, walls covered with tiny nines, photographs, and sticky notes in different colors representing different players in this twisted game. Yellow for Laura, blue for Robert, green for David, pink for Emma, red for the mysterious Cassandra Winters. Emma proved to be a cautious but valuable ally. We met every few weeks in obscure coffee shops, always taking precautions. "I mentioned you to David last week," she told me during our 3rd meeting, stirring her latte nervously. "Just casually, said I'd bumped into you. What did he say?" I tried to keep my voice steady, though my heart raced at the mere mention of communication with my son. He got very quiet, then changed the subject. She looked up at me apologetically, but he didn't seem angry, more confused, maybe. Confusion was better than hatred. Confusion meant questions, and questions could lead to answers, real ones, not the fabrications Laura and Robert had been feeding him. "There's something else," Emma continued. "David's engaged. Her name is Melissa. The wedding's in 6 months." The news hit me like a physical blow. My son was getting married, and I would not be there to see it. I wouldn't help him with his tux, wouldn't give a toast, wouldn't welcome my new daughter-in-law to the family. "Uncle Mike, are you okay?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. After a moment, I asked, "What's she like, this Melissa?" "Smart, kind, works as a pediatric nurse. I think you'd like her." I would never know if I'd like her. That had been stolen from me too. Does she know about me? The real me, not the monster Laura created. Emma shook her head. "I don't think so, but she seems independent, not the type to just accept what she's told without question. A potential ally, perhaps. But I needed to be careful. Approaching my son's fiancé directly could backfire catastrophically. Over the next month, my investigation expanded. I discovered Robert wasn't just stealing from David's savings account. He had a pattern of financial misdeeds stretching back years. Credit card fraud, investment scams, even a small Ponzi scheme that collapsed before authorities caught wind of it. The man was a financial predator, and now he had his sights set on my son's inheritance. Yes, inheritance. My parents had left a modest sum when they passed, earmarked specifically for David's future. It wasn't life-changing money, but it was significant enough for a house down payment in a good neighborhood or to start a small business. The account was structured to release the funds to David when he turned 30, less than 2 years away. I suspected Robert knew this and was positioning himself to intercept that money too. But he needed David to remain estranged from me for his plan to work. Then there was Laura. My ex-wife had always been manipulative, but the scale of this deception shocked even me. Through Emma, I learned that Laura had created entire false narratives about our marriage and divorce. She'd shown David doctored emails, edited photographs, even staged recordings that painted me as abusive and negligent. "How did you find out about the recordings?" I asked Emma during one of our meetings. "David mentioned them once when he was drunk. Said hearing your voice threatening his mother was what convinced him you were dangerous." Emma hesitated. "Uncle Mike, those recordings, they can't be real, right?" "Absolutely not. I never threatened Laura. Never raised my voice to her, even during the worst of our divorce. I ran a hand through my hair, now more gray than brown, but technology makes it easy to fake things like that these days." My next step was clear but difficult. I needed to hear those recordings to know exactly what David believed I had said. And for that, I needed access to Laura and Robert's house, a dangerous proposition given the restraining order. The opportunity came unexpectedly. Emma called me on a Tuesday night, her voice hushed and urgent. "They're going away this weekend, all of them. Mom mentioned that Laura and Dad are taking David and Melissa to their cabin for some wedding planning. They'll be gone Friday through Sunday." This was my chance, probably my only chance. "Emma, I need a favor, a big one." Her silence on the line spoke volumes. "I'm not asking you to break in with," I clarified quickly. "Just, do you still have a key to their house? From when you used to watch their dog, Uncle Mike?" Her voice was strained. "What you're asking? I know what I'm asking. But they've stolen my son with lies. I need to know what those lies are if I'm going to have any chance of showing him the truth." After a long pause, she sighed. "I still have the key, but I'm not giving it to you. If you're doing this, I'm coming with you." I tried to argue to protect her from involvement, but Emma had her mother's stubborn streak. "If you get caught, I get caught, either way," she reasoned. "At least this way, I can make sure you don't do anything stupid." That Friday night, with the house empty, Emma and I slipped in through the back door. The place was immaculate, tastefully decorated, a perfect exterior, hiding the rot within, much like the family itself. "His office is this way," Emma whispered, leading me down a hallway. "That's where he keeps everything important." Robert's office was a study in masculine pretension leather furniture, expensive bourbon on display, a large desk designed to intimidate. It took us nearly an hour of careful searching before we found what we were looking for, a password-protected external hard drive hidden in a false bottom drawer. "Can you get into it?" Emma asked as I connected the drive to the laptop I'd brought. "Maybe. In my Pi days, I'd learned a few tricks for bypassing basic security." Robert's password turned out to be embarrassingly simple: Cassandra Vincina, his mistress's name and age. What we found made my blood run cold. Folders upon folders of manipulated evidence, photoshopped images of bruises on Laura that never existed, email exchanges between Laura and me that never happened. And worst of all, audio recordings of arguments where my voice threatened and berated her. The voice was convincingly similar to mine, but the cadence was wrong, the phrasing unnatural. Modern AI voice technology, no doubt refined to sound authentic enough to fool a son who desperately wanted to believe his mother. "Oh my God," Emma whispered, her face pale in the blue light of the screen. "They've been systematically poisoning David against you for years." It was even worse than I'd imagined. There were documents detailing the fictional family I'd supposedly started in Arizona, complete with fake photos of my new children. There were fabricated court records showing I'd refused to pay child support. There was even a fictional police report claiming I'd once shown up drunk at Laura's house, threatening her. "Why would they go to such lengths?" Emma asked, her voice shaking. The answer was in another folder. One simply labeled Trust. Inside were documents relating to the trust fund my parents had established for David, including communications with the trustee where Robert, posing as me through a fake email account, inquired about changing the beneficiary directive. Money, I said grimly. It's always been about money. We copied everything onto my own drive, then carefully replaced Robert's drive exactly as we'd found it. As we prepared to leave, Emma paused by a shelf of family photos. "Look at this," she said, picking up a silver frame. It was a recent picture of David with Laura and Robert, all smiles at what appeared to be a family birthday celebration. But what caught my attention wasn't the forced smiles or the elaborate cake. It was the background, a wall calendar visible just behind them, and clearly marked on one of the dates was a single word: appointment. "Emma, when was this taken?" "Last month, I think. Dad's birthday." I checked the date on the calendar in the photo against my mental timeline. It matched perfectly with one of Robert's visits to the bank to withdraw money from David's account. "We need to go," I said, suddenly aware we'd been there too long. As we carefully locked up and slipped away, I felt both victorious and heartsick. I now had proof of their deception, irrefutable evidence that Laura and Robert had constructed an elaborate web of lies. But knowing the extent of those lies, understanding just how thoroughly they had poisoned my son against me, was almost unbearable. "What will you do now?" Emma asked, as we sat in my car a block away from the house. I stared straight ahead, my hands gripping the steering wheel, though the engine wasn't running. "I'm going to build my case. Document everything. Create a presentation of truth so compelling that even David won't be able to deny it. And then I'm going to find a way to make him see it. Before the wedding, before Robert can get his hands on that trust fund." Emma placed her hand over mine. "I'll help you, but Uncle Mike, be prepared. Sometimes people don't want to see the truth, especially when it means admitting they've been wrong for so long." I nodded, understanding the risk. If I approached this wrong, I could lose David forever. But I had to try. A father without his child is like a tree without roots. The winds of time will topple it. As I drove Emma home, I made a silent promise to my son. Wherever he was that night, I would bring the truth to light, no matter the cost. And someday, somehow, we would sit across from each other, again not as strangers bound by blood, but as father and son reunited by truth. 3 weeks after our discovery in Robert's office, I was no closer to finding a way to make David see the truth. I had organized all the evidence, created a compelling presentation, even rehearsed what I would say, but it was all useless without an opportunity to speak with my son. Emma had tried to broach the subject with him twice more, only to be met with stony silence and quick changes of topic. The wedding plans were accelerating, and with them, I suspected Robert's scheme to access the trust fund. I was sitting in my apartment, staring at the war room wall, when my doorbell rang. This was unusual. I rarely had visitors, and never unannounced one. Cautiously, I checked the people. A young woman stood in the hallway, nervously shifting her weight from one foot to the other. She was petite, with dark curly hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing scrubs under an open coat. I didn't recognize her, but something about her seemed vaguely familiar. "Who is it?" I called through the door. "Mr. Harrison. My name is Melissa Winters. I'm engaged to your son." My heart nearly stopped. David's fiancée was at my door. How had she found me? Why was she here? Was this some kind of trap? I opened the door slowly, keeping the security chain in place. "How do I know who you are?" She held up her phone, showing me a photograph of her and David, his arm around her shoulder, both of them smiling at the camera. It was recent. David looked older than when I'd last seen him, more filled out, with a short beard that suited him. My throat tightened at the sight of my son, happy and healthy, living his life without me. "What do you want?" "To talk, please." Her eyes, warm brown and direct, met mine without flinching. "I'm alone. No one knows I'm here." I unhooked the chain and let her in, my investigator's instincts on high alert despite the surge of hope in my chest. She entered cautiously, glancing around my modest apartment before settling on the couch, perched on its edge like a bird ready for flight. "How did you find me?" I asked, remaining standing. "I'm a nurse. I know how to research people when I need to." She smiled slightly, though her hands twisted in her lap. Also, Emma mentioned you lived in Westridge Apartments. There aren't that many Michael Harrisons in the building directory. Emma sent you. No. She'd be horrified to know I'm here. Everyone would. She took a deep breath. Mr. Harrison, I need to know the truth. About you, about David's mother and stepfather, about why David has this hole in his heart where his father should be. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception, for the trap I still half expected. Why now? You're marrying him in what, 5 months? Why question the family narrative now? For months, she corrected automatica, and I'm questioning it because something doesn't add up. She leaned forward, intensity in her gaze. David has nightmares. Did you know that? He wakes up sometimes calling for his dad for you. Then he remembers, and this look of hatred or fear or something comes over him. It's like watching someone put on a mask. Her words pierced me. My son still dreamed of me, somewhere in the depths of his subconscious, where Laura's poison couldn't reach. And then there's Emma, Melissa continued. She gets this look whenever your name comes up, like she's keeping a secret. And LaRoche is always watching me, like she's worried about what I might say or do. What about Robert? Her expression hardened. Robert makes my skin crawl. To be honest, the way he controls everything, especially the financial discussions for the wedding. She hesitated. Last week, he suggested David and I should sign some paperwork for family asset protection. When I asked to have my own lawyer review it, he got unpleasant. The pieces clicked together. Let me guess, the paperwork would give him some form of control over any assets David might inherit or receive in the future. Her eyes widened. How did you know? Because Robert's a con man, and his current con is my son. I moved to the hallway. Come with me. There's something you need to see. I led her to the war room. Her sharp intake of breath as she took in the wall of evidence told me everything I needed to know. She hadn't been sent here to trap me. She was genuinely seeking answers. My God, she whispered, moving closer to examine the photographs, the timelines, the sticky notes. You've been investigating them for months. Ever since I discovered Robert was stealing money from an account I set up for David. I pointed to the bank statements. That's just the beginning. The real target is David's trust fund from his grandparents. It becomes accessible when he turns 30. Melissa turned to me, her expression a mix of horror and determination. Tell me everything. For the next 2 hours, I walked her through it, all the fake emails, the doctored photographs, the AI-generated voice recordings, the fictional family in Arizona, the elaborate web of lies Laura and Robert had constructed to keep David and me apart. Melissa listened intently, asking sharp, insightful questions that revealed both her intelligence and her love for my son. These recordings, she said at one point, David has mentioned hearing your voice threatening Laura. He said it was the most convincing evidence that you were dangerous. Those voices were created using AI, I explained. Listen closely, the cadence is wrong. Certain phrases I would never use. It's sophisticated, but it's fake. By the time I finished, Melissa sat silently, absorbing everything. Finally, she looked up at me. Mr. Harrison, I believe you, and I think I can help you reach David. Hope surged within me, but caution tempered it. How? I've been concerned about Robert's influence for months. David trusts me. If I express doubts, raise questions, I can plant seeds of doubt. She stood, pacing the small room. But it has to be subtle. If I come right out and defend you, he'll think I've been manipulated too. It's risky for you, I warned. If they suspect you're helping me, it's worth the risk. Her voice was firm. I love David, Mr. Harrison, and he deserves to know his real father, not the monster they've invented. She paused. Besides, I've seen how Laura and Robert operate. I don't want to start my marriage with them having that kind of control over our lives. She was brave. This woman my son had chosen. I could see why he loved her. There's something else, she said, more hesitantly. Something I discovered accidentally that might help us. What is it? Last month, I was looking for a sweater in David's closet. I found a box of old photos and letters hidden in the back. She smiled, sadly. He kept them, Mr. Harrison. Birthday cards you sent when he was little. Photos of the two of you fishing. A Father's Day card with a handprint he made in kindergarten. My eyes filled with tears. He kept them, she nodded. Hidden away. But yes, that's when I first started questioning the official story. If you were really the monster they described, why would he secretly keep these treasures? It was the first ray of real hope I'd felt in years. Somewhere beneath the anger and the lies, my son still harbored memories of our love. We need a plan, I said, wiping my eye. A careful one. Over the next hour, Melissa and I developed a strategy. She would subtly question inconsistencies in Laura and Robert's narrative, express concern about the financial documents Robert wanted them to sign, and most importantly, find ways to remind David of happy memories from his childhood, memories that included me. The engagement party is next month, she told me as she prepared to leave. It's at their house. Laura's been planning it for weeks. Be careful, I cautioned. If they suspect anything, I know. She straightened her shoulders. I'm smarter than they think, and I have one advantage they don't. What's that? I genuinely love David and want what's best for him. They only love what he can give them. She held out her hand formally. It's good to finally meet you, Mr. Harrison. I hope someday soon I can call you Dad. I shook her hand, this unexpected ally who had given me new hope. Call me Michael, and thank you, Melissa, for loving my son enough to seek the truth. After she left, I stood in the war room, staring at the photograph of David that she'd allowed me to copy from her phone. My son, soon to be married, a man now with a life I knew almost nothing about. But for the first time in 3 years, I allowed myself to truly believe I might be part of his life again someday. That the wall of lies might finally crumble. I added a new color to my investigation board, purple for Melissa, our secret weapon in the fight for truth. That night, I slept better than I had in years, dreaming not of loss and betrayal, but of reconciliation, of standing beside my son on his wedding day, where a father belongs. Of course, life rarely follows the path of our dreams. And Laura and Robert had spent years perfecting their deception. They wouldn't surrender their control easily. The battle for my son's heart and mind and his future was just beginning. The next few weeks passed in a tense dance of cautious hope and strategic planning. Melissa became my lifeline to David's world, sharing details about the upcoming engagement party, wedding plans, and most importantly, subtle shifts in David's demeanor as she carefully planted seeds of doubt. I asked him about his childhood yesterday. She told me during one of our clandestine meetings at a cafe 3 towns over, specifically about fishing trips. He got this faraway look and actually smiled before catching himself. The Mercer Lake trips, I said. The memory warming me, despite the coffee shop's aggressive air conditioning. We went every summer from when he was 6 until he was 15. He mentioned a blue tackle box with your initials carved into it. I nearly dropped my cup. He remembers that. I gave it to him on his 12th birthday. Told him it was time he had his own gear instead of sharing mine. Melissa smiled. He said it was the first time he felt like a man instead of a boy. Those were his exact words. The blue tackle box. Such a small thing, yet it had lodged in my son's memory, despite years of poisonous lies designed to erase every good thing between us. What about Robert and Laura? I asked, bringing us back to the more pressing concerns. Any progress on that front? Melissa's expression darkened. Robert's been pushing harder about those financial documents. I've stalled by saying my cousin is a lawyer and offered to review them for free, but that I've been too busy with hospital shifts to get them to her. Good. Keep stalling. There's something else. She hesitated, glancing around, though the cafe was nearly empty. I overheard a phone call between Robert and someone named Cassandra. It was intimate. I nodded grimly. His mistress. I've documented his visits to her apartment over several months. Well, Laura doesn't know, and from what I could gather, Robert is getting nervous about money. He mentioned accelerating the timeline and securing the assets before things get complicated. I think she broke off, visibly distressed. You think what? I think he's planning to leave Laura once he gets control of David's trust fund. Maybe even run off with this Cassandra woman. It made sense. Robert had a history of trading up from my sister to my ex-wife, and now potentially from Laura to his younger mistress. Each move calculated for maximum financial benefit. The engagement party is this Saturday, Melissa continued. Everyone will be there, Laura's family, even some of Robert's relatives. Emma too, and the focus will be on you and David, not on Robert's schemes. I drummed my fingers on the table, thinking, this could be an opportunity. For what? to gather more evidence, possibly even catch Robert in a compromising position. I leaned forward. Does the house have security cameras? Yes, but only outside. The interior is camera-free. Laura's paranoid about privacy. She gave me a pointed look, which is ironic considering how extensively she's invaded David's perfect. And everyone will be distracted with the party. A plan was forming, risky, but potentially. Melissa, I need you to do something that might seem strange. She listened carefully as I outlined my idea. Her medical training had taught her to remain calm in crises, and she showed that same composure now, asking precise questions about timing and logistics. It's dangerous, she said finally. If you're caught, I won't be. I tried to sound more confident than I felt. But even if something goes wrong, I'll take full responsibility. No one will know you were involved. She shook her head firmly. That's not my concern. We're in this together now. She checked her watch and stood to leave. I have a shift in an hour. I'll text you the final details for Saturday. As we parted ways, she surprised me with a quick hug. We're going to fix this, Michael. David deserves his real father back. Saturday arrived with unseasonably warm weather and the nervous energy of an approaching storm. I parked my nondescript rental car, no sense, risking my own vehicle being recognized 3 blocks from Laura and Robert's sprawling suburban home. The street was already lined with guests' vehicles, including several catering vans that provided perfect cover. Dressed in black pants and a white button-down shirt, I could easily pass for catering staff from a distance. My hair, now completely gray, and the thin-framed glasses I rarely wore further obscured my identity. In my pocket was a small USB drive containing a special program I'd developed during my Pi days for extracting data from computers without leaving digital footprints. At precisely 7:43 p.m., as planned, my phone vibrated with Melissa's text, "Coast clear, service entrance unlocked, 10 minutes max." I moved quickly but calmly, just another worker bringing supplies from a van. The service entrance led to a mudroom adjacent to the kitchen, which was chaos: servers preparing appetizers, bartenders mixing drinks, coordinators barking orders. No one gave me a second glance as I slipped into the hallway, following the memorized floor plan Melissa had provided. Robert's office was locked, but that presented no challenge to someone with my background. Inside, the room was exactly as Emma had described: pretentious leather furniture, expensive bourbon, imposing desk. I moved directly to the computer and inserted my USB drive. The program required only minutes to copy Robert's most recent files, focusing on financial records, emails, and any documents containing keywords related to David, the trust fund, or Cassandra. While it worked, I quickly photographed physical documents on the desk, including what appeared to be draft paperwork for transferring assets. I was about to leave when I noticed something new: a small safe, tucked beneath a bookshelf, partially hidden by a decorative plant. It wasn't in any of Emma's description. Professional curiosity made me examine it closer. It was a basic model, the kind sold in office supply stores. Child's play for someone with my training. I hesitated only briefly before deciding to open it. Whatever Robert kept in a hidden safe was likely relevant to my investigation. Inside were passports Robert's and one for Cassandra, Winters, along with a substantial amount of cash in various currencies and a small velvet bag containing what felt like jewelry. So he was planning an escape. The final confirmation of his intentions. I photographed everything, then carefully replaced it all exactly as I'd found it. The USB program had completed its work, and I removed the drive, leaving the computer exactly as it had been. 8 minutes had passed. I was just about to exit when I heard footsteps approaching, heavy, masculine footsteps. There was no time to reach the door. I slipped behind the heavy curtains covering the window alcove, barely breathing as the office door opened. "I told you not to call me here." Robert's voice, angry but hushed. He was on his phone. "Yes, I know we need to move quickly." "No, she doesn't suspect anything." "Yes, the papers are ready. David's signing them after the party tonight." "Of course he'll sign. He trusts me completely." A pause, then a softer tone. "Soon, baby. 2 more weeks. Once the transfer is complete, we'll have enough to disappear somewhere. They'll never find us." "No, not the Bahamas. Too obvious. I'm thinking Montenegro." Yes, I've already started moving the cash. Don't worry about Laura, she's clueless, as always. Another pause. I have to go. People will notice I'm missing from the party. I'll call you tomorrow. He ended the call, muttering something under his breath, then left the office, closing the door behind him. I remained frozen behind the curtain for another 30 seconds before emerging, heart pounding. This was it, the smoking gun. Robert was planning to steal David's inheritance and flee with his mistress in just 2 weeks. I needed to get out now. My phone vibrated again, people asking for Robert coming your way. Get out. There was no time to reach the service entrance. I glanced out the window, a side yard, empty in the growing darkness. It would have to do. I opened the window, removed the screen, and slipped out, dropping quietly to the ground below. But as I straightened, I found myself face to face with a young man holding a cigarette, clearly having stepped outside for a smoke, a painfully familiar young man with my eyes and his mother's nose. David, my son. For one eternal moment, we stared at each other, mutual recognition dawning. I saw the shock in his eyes, quickly replaced by confusion, then anger. "What the hell are you doing here?" he demanded, his voice a harsh whisper. "There's a restraining order, David. Please, I can explain. Save it." He glanced back toward the house, clearly torn between confronting me and causing a scene at his own engagement party. "Just get out of here before I call the police." "I found proof," I said quickly, desperate to make use of this unexpected moment. "Robert is stealing from me. He's planning to take your trust fund and run." Doubt flickered across his face, so briefly I might have imagined it. "More lies. That's all you've ever told." "No. Your mother and Robert are the ones who've been lying to you. For years, I took a risk, stepping closer. The recordings of me threatening your mother, fake. The emails, fabricate. My supposed new family in Arizona, fiction. Stop." His voice cracked slightly. "Ask yourself why I would break a restraining order, risk arrest, just to tell you this. What could I possibly gain except the truth?" He looked away, jaw tight. "You need to leave now. David, do you remember the blue tackle box? The one with my initials? Remember how I told you it was time you had your own instead of sharing mine?" His head snapped back, eyes wide with surprise. "How did you?" "Because it happened. Because I'm your father, and despite everything they've told you, I have never, ever stopped loving you or fighting for you." He stared at me, and for a moment, one precious moment, I saw the little boy who used to run into my arms when I came home from work. Then, the mask slammed back into place. "Leave," he said flatly, "or I swear I will call the police." I had no choice. I nodded once and backed away, moving quickly toward the street. As I reached the corner, I glanced back. David still stood there, watching me go, cigarette forgotten in his hand. His face, half illuminated by the light spilling from the house windows, showed something I hadn't seen in our brief encounter. Doubt. It wasn't much, just a crack in the foundation of lies Laura and Robert had built. But sometimes, a crack is all you need to bring down an entire structure. As I drove away, one thought sustained me. My son had seen me, had heard my voice, and for one unguarded moment, he had remembered who I truly was to him. The war for David's truth was far from over, but tonight, I'd won a crucial battle. 3 days after the engagement party, I still hadn't heard from Melissa. My texts went unanswered. My calls went straight to voicemail. Fear gnawed at my insides. Had she been discovered? Had David told Laura and Robert about our encounter? On the 4th day, just as I was considering more drastic measures to ensure her safety, a text came through from an unknown number. "Park bench by the duck pond, 3 p.m. Come alone." The duck pond was in a public park, 15 miles from my apartment, far enough from both our usual territories to be safe, public enough to prevent confrontation. I arrived early, scanning the area for any sign of a trap, old habits refusing to die. Melissa appeared right at 3, wearing large sunglasses despite the cloudy day, her hair tucked under a baseball cap. She sat beside me without greeting, her body language tense. "Are you okay?" I asked quietly. "No." Her voice was tight. "Everything's falling apart, Michael." My heart sank. "David told them about seeing me." "No. That's the strangest part. He hasn't told anyone, not even me." She turned to face me, removing her sunglasses. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying or lack of sleep. Probably both, but he's been different since that night. Distant, asking questions about things Laura and Robert have told him. He's questioning everything. Relief and concern battled within me. That's good, isn't it? That's what we wanted. Yes, but she twisted her engagement ring anxiously. Robert suspects something. He's watching me constantly, checking my phone when he thinks I'm not looking. Yesterday, he accidentally spilled coffee on my laptop, then insisted on fixing it for me. When he returned it, I'm certain it had monitoring software installed. Which is why you're using a different phone to contact me. She nodded. Burner phone, paid cash. And I told everyone I was going grocery shopping. She glanced at her watch. I don't have long, but there's something you need to know. From her purse, she withdrew a manila envelope and handed it to me. Inside were photocopies of the financial documents Robert had been pressuring David to sign. I managed to get copies before David signed them. It's worse than we thought, Michael. These don't just give Robert access to the trust fund, they essentially transfer all control of David's current and future assets to a corporate entity that Robert fully controls. He'd be able to drain every penny without David's knowledge or consent. I skimmed the documents, my blood running cold at the legal language designed to obscure the true purpose. Has David signed these yet? No. I convinced him we should have a lawyer review them first. Robert was furious, but trying not to show it. He keeps saying there's a time sensitivity to these financial arrangements. David's starting to question why his stepfather is so insistent. The seeds of doubt are growing, I murmured, still examining the paperwork. There's more. She lowered her voice further. David found the blue tackle box. My head snapped up. What? After your encounter, he went to his storage unit in the middle of the night, called in sick to work the next day, which he never does. He spent hours going through old boxers. He found the tackle box, along with photo albums his mother told him had been destroyed in a basement flood. Hope surged within me. Photos of us together. She nodded. Family vacations, birthday parties, fishing trips, the whole documented history of your relationship with him. He hasn't said a word to anyone about finding them, but I caught him looking at them when he thought I was asleep. I closed my eyes briefly, imagining my son rediscovering the truth of his childhood through those preserved moments. And he still hasn't mentioned seeing me at the party, not a word. But yesterday, he asked me something strange. He said, if you discovered someone had been lying to you your entire adult life, what would you do? I told him I would want to know the whole truth, no matter how painful. We sat in silence for a moment, watching a mother and her young daughter throw bread to the eager ducks. What about the evidence from Robert's computer? Melissa finally asked. Did you find anything useful? More than useful, devastating. I had spent days analyzing the data extracted during my office infiltration. Robert's been systematically embezzling from David's accounts for years. Small amounts at first, but growing bolder. And the communications with Cassandra confirmed their planning to disappear as soon as they secured the trust fund money one-way tickets to Montenegro already purchased for 3 weeks from now. 3 weeks. Alarm crossed her face. That's right after the trust fund becomes accessible. David turns 30 next month. Exactly. Everything's accelerated. I handed her a small USB drive. This contains everything I found, organized and annotated. Bank records, email exchanges, travel arrangements, all of it. If you can find a way to show this to David. She pocketed the drive, her expression resolute. I'll find a way, but we need to be careful. If Robert suspects we're onto him, he might run earlier with whatever he can grab. I finished her thought. Or worse, he might white what? Her eyes widened with sudden fear. I hesitated, not wanting to frighten her further, but she deserved the whole truth. Men like Robert, when cornered, can become dangerous. If he realizes his plan is exposed, that millions of dollars are slipping through his fingers, you think he might hurt David? Or me? Her voice was barely audible. I think we need to be extremely careful. Robert has everything to lose now. I placed my hand over hers briefly. Promise me you'll take precaution. Don't confront him alone. Don't let David confront him without backup. She nodded, then checked her watch again and stood. I should go. I've been shopping too long already. As she turned to leave, I called after her softly. Melissa? She looked back, Thank you for believing me, for helping me fight for my son. A sad smile crossed her face. He's worth fighting for. And honestly, Michael, so are you. After she left, I remained on the bench, turning over our conversation in my mind. David was questioning the narrative he'd been fed for years. The foundation of lies was cracking. But Robert was growing desperate, and desperate men rarely go quietly into the night. I needed a contingency plan. 3 days later, as I was updating my investigation board with new information, my doorbell rang the same distinctive pattern Melissa had used before. Heart pounding, I rushed to answer it. But it wasn't Melissa standing in my hallway. It was David. My son stood before me, pale and drawn, his eyes haunted by shadows of sleepless nights. He looked both older and younger than he had at the engagement party. The confident young man stripped away to reveal the wounded boy beneath. "Can I come in?" His voice was hoarse, uncertain. I stepped back wordlessly, too shocked to speak. David entered cautiously, his gaze sweeping the apartment before settling on me. "I've been remembering things," he said abruptly. "Things that don't match what Mom and Robert told. Things about you." He pulled something from his jacket Pakuta photograph, dog-eared and faded. He held it out to me with a slightly trembling hand. It showed the two of us at Mercer Lake, both sunburned and grinning, holding up a string of fish. I was kneeling beside him, one arm around his small shoulders. He couldn't have been more than 9. "That was the first time you caught more fish than I did," I said softly, memories flooding back. "You were so proud." We stopped for ice cream on the way home to celebrate. "Triple chocolate fudge," he murmured. "My favorite. You ate so much, you got sick that night." Your mother was furious with. The ghost of a smile touched his lips before vanishing. I found dozens of photos like this. Photos Mom told me were lost. Letters you wrote me that she said never existed. His eyes, so like mine, finally met mine directly. "I need to know the truth. All of it. No matter what it is." I gestured toward the hallway. "Then you should see this." I led him to the war room, watching his face as he took in the wall of evidence, the timelines, the documented lies and manipulations. He moved slowly around the room, examining everything with the careful attention of someone trying to rebuild their understanding of reality. "You've been investigating them," he said finally. "I've been trying to understand why my son suddenly believed I was a monster." I kept my distance, giving him space to process. "Why every letter I sent went unanswered. Why you got a restraining order against me." He flinched at that. "The letters she showed me, the threatening ones. Fabricate, probably created using templates of my actual handwriting. And the recordings? Your voice threatening her. AI technology. Listen to them carefully. The cadence is wrong. The word choices aren't mine." David rubbed his face, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. "How do I know you're telling the truth? That this isn't just another manipulation?" I moved to my desk and retrieved a folder I'd prepared for this moment, a moment I'd dreamed of but never truly believed would come. "These are original documents from our divorce. Notice your mother's signature on the agreement, where she specifically requested that I have minimal contact with you during exchanging. Court transcripts where I fought for joint custody while she argued against it. Bank records showing the college fund I maintained for you, separate from the child support I never missed paying." He took the folder, his hands steadier now. "And Robert, what about him?" I hesitated. "That's more complicated and potentially dangerous." David's jaw tightened. "Is he stealing from me? From the trust fund my grandparents left?" "Yes, and planning to disappear with his mistress once he secures full control of your assets?" I watched his face carefully. "How much has Melissa told you?" "Enough to make me start asking questions." He looked up sharply. "She's been helping you, hasn't she?" "She loves you, David, enough to risk everything to make sure you know the truth." He nodded slowly, then sank into my desk chair, the weight of revelations visibly pressing on his shoulders. 3 years, he whispered. 3 years I've hated you, believed you abandoned us, but believed you were. His voice cracked. "I said such horrible things to you." I moved closer, cautiously, as if approaching a wounded animal. "You believed what they carefully taught you to believe. The most sophisticated lie is the one built around small truths." What do I do now? He looked up at me, and for a moment I saw the little boy who used to ask me to chase away the monsters under his bed. If this is all true and, deep down, I think I've always known something wasn't right, then what do I do? I crouched beside him, not quite touching him, but close enough that he could reach for me if he wanted to. First, we make sure you and Melissa are safe. Then we expose the truth, all of it. And then, I smiled sadly. And then that's up to you, son. I've spent 3 years fighting to get back to you. But what happens next, whether you want me in your life again, that's your decision to make. For a long moment, he just looked at me, searching my face as if seeking answers written there. Then, slowly, he extended his hand. I think, he said quietly, we have a lot of catching up to do, Dad. David stayed until well past midnight. We talked for hours, hesitantly at first, then with growing openness as the barriers between us gradually lowered. He asked questions about his childhood, about the divorce, about the years we'd lost. I answered everything as honestly as I could, even the difficult parts where I'd made mistakes. I wasn't a perfect father, I admitted as the conversation deepened. I worked too much sometimes. I missed things I shouldn't have. The divorce blindsided me, and I handled some of it badly. But you didn't do what they said you did, David said, his voice steady now. You didn't abandon us. You didn't refuse to support me. Never. I looked him straight in the eyes. I wrote to you every week for the first year after you cut me off. Every month for the second year. I never stopped trying to reach you. He nodded slowly. I believe you. 3 simple words that meant everything. When he finally left, promising to return the next day with Melissa. We awkwardly shook hands, neither of us quite ready for more, but both aware that something fundamental had shifted between us. The next morning, my phone rang early. It was David, his voice tense. We have a problem. Robert knows something's wrong. He showed up at our apartment this morning, demanding to know where I was last night. What did you tell him? That I was with a college friend, working through pre-wedding jitters. He pretended to believe me, but I could see it in his eyes he doesn't. And he's accelerated the timeline on those financial documents. Says they need to be signed today because of some regulatory deadline. My mind raced through the implication. He's panicking. He suspects the plan is unraveling. That's not all, David continued, his voice dropping. I overheard him on the phone afterward. He told someone to move everything forward and to be ready to leave by tomorrow night if necessary. Dad, I think he's preparing to run. The use of Dad didn't escape me, but there was no time to savor it. With whatever money he can grab before the main prize, I concluded grimly, where are you now? At work. Melissa's at the hospital for a 12-hour shift. We're meeting at your place afterward, around 8. Good. Stay in public places until then. Don't go back to your apartment alone. I hesitate. And David, don't confront Robert or your mother yet. Not until we have a solid plan. Too late for that, he said, a new hardness in his voice. Mom's called a family dinner tonight. Says she has something important to discuss. I think Robert's going to push me to sign those papers there, with everyone watching. Don't go. I have to. His tone brooked. No argument. If I don't show up, they'll know something's wrong. Besides, he added more softly, I need to do this. I need to look them in the eye when I tell them I know the truth. I recognized the determination in his voice, the same stubborn resolve I'd seen in the mirror my whole life. Then don't go alone. Take Melissa with you. I can't. She won't be off work in time. A pause, but maybe you could be there. My heart skipped a beat. David, the restraining order can be dropped. I filed the paperwork this morning. I sat down hard, overwhelmed by the gesture. Even so, showing up at their house, not at the house, he interrupted. At the restaurant, Leonie's on Westwood Boulevard, 7 o'clock. Another pause. I want you there, Dad. I need you there. How could I refuse? After 3 years of separation, my son was asking for my support. I'll be there. But David, be prepared. When cornered, people like Robert can become dangerous. I know. That's partly why I want you there. His voice grew distant, as if he'd turned away from the phone. I have to go. Someone's coming. 7 o'clock, Leonie's back corner table. The line went dead, leaving me with a swirling mix of hope and dread. After so many years of fighting from the shadows, everything was rushing into the light at once. By tonight, the truth would be fully exposed, for better or worse. I spent the day preparing, reviewing all the evidence we'd gathered, making copies of key documents, even visiting my old friend at the police department to give him a sealed envelope just in case. By 6:30, I was parked near Leonie's, watching the entrance through my windshield. Laura and Robert arrived first, followed by Emma, whose surprised double-take at seeing my car confirmed she knew something significant was happening. David arrived last, alone, his posture straight but his movements betraying tension. I waited 15 minutes, then entered the restaurant, nodding to the hostess as if I belonged there. The family was seated in a semi-private alcove, intimate enough for conversation, but public enough to discourage scenes. I approached slowly, watching the tableau unfold before me. Robert was talking animated, gesturing with his hands the way he did when trying to convince someone of something. Laura sat beside him, her face a mask of supportive agreement. David sat across from them, his back to me, shoulders visibly tight. Emma perched at the end of the table, looking distinctly uncomfortable. None of them noticed me until I was standing directly beside the table. "Good evening," I said quietly. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Laura's face drained of color. Robert half rose from his seat, fury contorting his features. Emma's eyes widened in a mix of shock and what might have been relief. And David, my son, turned and gave me a small, tight nod that contained equal parts fear and resolve. "What the hell are you doing here?" Robert snarled. "There's a restraining order." "Not anymore," David cut in, his voice steady. "I dropped it this morning." Laura recovered quickly, her face arranging itself into concerned dismay. "David, sweetheart, what's going on? Why would you do that?" "After everything he's done, that's why I called this dinner," David interrupted again. "To talk about exactly what hasn't been done." He gestured to the empty chair beside him. "Sit down, Dad. You're right on time." I took the offered seat, hyper-aware of the tension crackling around the table. Laura was staring at me with naked hatred. Robert's face had flushed an alarming shade of red. "This is outrageous," he spluttered. "After all we've done for you, David, you invite this man to dinner without warning us." "Yes," David said simply, "because it's time for the truth. All of it." Laura reached across the table, grasping for David's hand, which he subtly withdrew. "Darling, whatever he's told you, stop." David's voice was quiet, but carried unmistakable authority. "I found the photos, Mom. The ones you said were destroyed in the basement flood. I found the letters Dad wrote me that you said never arrived. I found the blue tackle box." A heavy silence fell over the table. Emma stared determinedly at her water glass. Robert and Laura exchanged quick, panicked glances. "I don't know what you think you've discovered," Laura began carefully, "but no more lies." David placed a folder on the table, copies of the evidence we'd gathered. "I know everything. The fake emails, the doctored recording, the money Robert's been stealing from my account." Robert's face twisted with rage. "How dare you accuse me? Save it." David's tone was ice. "I have bank record. I have the withdrawal dates and times. I have security camera footage of you at the bank." He turned to Laura. "And I know about Cassandra." Laura blinked, confusion replacing the calculation in her eyes. "Who?" "Robert's mistress," I supplied quietly. "The woman he's planning to run away with once he gets control of David's trust fund." Laura's head whipped toward Robert, genuine shock written across her feature. "What?" For the first time, Robert looked truly cornered. "This is absurd. They're making things up to turn you against me." "The one-way tickets to Montenegro," David continued relentlessly. "Purchased 3 weeks ago. The offshore account you've been siphoning money into, the apartment on Lexington, where you meet her every Thursday afternoon." The color drained from Robert's face as quickly as it had appeared. Laura's expression hardened into something dangerous. "Is this true?" she demanded, her voice barely above a whisper. Robert's eyes darted around the table, calculating his options. "Of course not," he said, but his denial lacked conviction. I reached into my jacket and withdrew my phone. "Shall we call Cassandra and ask her? I have her number right here." I turned to Laura. "Or perhaps you'd like to see the photographs of Robert entering her building. Or the records of the jewelry he's purchased for her, using money stolen from your son." Laura's hands began to tremble. "All these years," she whispered. "All these years you told me Michael was the liar, the manipulator." She turned to David, something like horror dawning in her eyes. "What have we done?" Not we, Mom, David corrected gently. You knew the truth about Dad. You deliberately poisoned me against him. You showed me fabricated evidence, played me doctored recordings, told me lie after lie until I cut him out of my life completely. Tears welled in Laura's eyes. I was protecting you. No? David's voice hardened. You were punishing him for not wanting you anymore. And you were punishing me for loving him. Emma finally spoke up, her voice small. It's true, Aunt Laura. I've seen the evidence too. Dad and you. You created this whole false narrative. Robert, seeing his allies falling away, abruptly shifted tactic. Whatever you think you know, he said, leaning toward David, you can't prove any of it legally. And if you try to make these ridiculous accusations public, we'll sue you for defamation. We'll destroy your reputation, your career. That's enough, Robert. I kept my voice level despite the rage building inside me. It's over. David knows the truth. The police have copies of everything we've found. There will be no more threats, no more manipulation, no more stealing. Something dangerous flashed in Robert's eyes. You think you've won? You think you can just walk back into his life after 3 years and play daddy again? He laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. You've lost everything. Your son spent 3 years hating you. Those are years you'll never get back. You're right, I said quietly. Those years are gone forever. But David and I have the rest of our lives to rebuild what you tried to destroy. I turned to my son, whose eyes shone with unshed tears, and we will rebuild it, one day at a time. David nodded, a mixture of pain and hope on his face. I'd like that. Robert stood suddenly, his chair screeching against the floor. This is pathetic. All of you, sitting here with your sanctimonious judgments. He glared at Laura. You were never enough for me, just like you weren't enough for him. He jerked his chin toward me. Robert, please, Laura began, but he cut her off with a dismissive gesture. I'm done with all of you. He threw his napkin on the table. Enjoy your little family reunion. I'll be gone before any of you can do a thing about it. As he turned to leave, David spoke one last time. The police are already watching the airports and train stations. Robert, your accounts have been frozen as of this afternoon. My son's voice was calm, controlled. You're not going anywhere. Robert froze, then slowly turned back, his face a mask of hatred. For one terrible moment, I thought he might lunge across the table at David. Instead, he simply said, "This isn't over," before stalking out of the restaurant. The silence he left behind was deafening. Laura sat motionless, tears streaming down her face. Emma looked both relieved and devastated, and David, my son, reached out and, for the first time in 3 years, took my hand in his. It is over, he said softly, and it's just beginning. 1 year later, I stood in the backyard of my new home, watching as David carefully turned steaks on the grill. Melissa sat nearby on the patio, deep in conversation with Emma, both of them laughing at something I couldn't hear. The evening sun cast everything in a golden glow, a fitting light for what felt like a golden moment in a life that had seen far too much shadow. Need any help with those? I asked, approaching my son with 2 bottles of beer. David glanced up and smiled, a genuine, easy smile that no longer held any trace of the wariness that had lingered for months after our reconciliation. I think I've got it. Though if these turn out like last time, we might be ordering pizza. They smell perfect, I assured him, handing over a bottle. He accepted it with a nod of thanks. Still feels strange sometimes, doesn't it? Being normal like that. Normal is overrated, I replied, clinking my bottle against his. I prefer extraordinary. And it was extraordinary, this fragile new reality we'd constructed from the ruins of the old one. The past year had been a journey through difficult terrain, legal battles, emotional reckonings, painful truths, and tentative steps toward healing. Robert had been arrested 3 days after our confrontation at the restaurant, caught trying to leave the country on a fake passport. The charges against him were substantial: fraud, embezzlement, identity theft. He was currently serving a 5-year sentence, with additional time likely when the tax evasion charges were fully processed. Laura's story had taken a different turn. After the initial shock and denial, she had eventually broken down and admitted her role in separating David and me. Her motivations were complex: wounded pride, bitter resentment over the divorce, and genuine belief that she was protecting David from being hurt, as she had been hurt. None of it justified what she'd done, but understanding her reasons was an important part of David's healing process. She was in therapy now, working to rebuild her relationship with her son on more honest foundations. David visited her twice a month, difficult, painful visits that nevertheless felt necessary to both of them. I kept my distance, not out of lingering anger, but out of respect for the delicate work they were doing. "Dad." David's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "I think these are done. Let's eat then." I helped him transfer the steaks to a platter. Before Melissa accuses us of deliberately stalling, my almost daughter-in-law looked up at the mention of her name. "I heard that, and yes, I'm starving." Hospital shifts do that to a person. The four of us settled around the patio table as the summer evenings softened around us. This had become our new tradition: Sunday dinners together whenever Melissa's nursing schedule allowed. Simple, normal, healing time together. "So," Emma said as we began eating, "have you two finally set a date? Or are you going to make us wait forever for this wedding?" David and Melissa exchanged a glance filled with private meaning. They had postponed their original wedding plans in the aftermath of everything that happened, choosing to focus on healing and rebuilding rather than rushing into celebration. "Actually," Melissa said, her face glowing with more than just the sunset, "we have." "October 15th, David added. "Small ceremony, just family and close friends." "That's wonderful news," I said, genuinely delighted. "About time, I might add." David laughed. "We wanted to be sure we were doing it for the right reasons, not because it was already in motion, and we wanted certain things to be settled first," Melissa added, her eyes meeting mine, meaningful. I understood what she meant. They had wanted our relationship, father and son, to be on solid ground before they moved forward with their life together. It was a gift beyond measure, this consideration, this inclusion in their most important decisions. "Well, I think it's perfect timing," Emma declared. "And I expect to be maid of honor." Of course," Melissa agreed with a laugh. As the conversation flowed around me, I found myself watching my son, this grown man who had fought his way back to the truth, who had found the courage to question everything he thought he knew, who had chosen reconciliation over continued estrangement. My pride in him was immeasurable. After dinner, as Emma helped Melissa clear the dishes, David and I moved to the two Adirondack chairs, facing the small garden I'd planted when I bought this house, a house deliberately chosen for its proximity to David and Melissa's new place. "I have something to ask you," David said after a comfortable silence. "Something important." "Anything," I replied, meaning it completely. He turned to face me, his expression suddenly serious. "Will you be my best man? At the wedding?" The question caught me off guard, emotion rising so swiftly in my throat that I couldn't immediately respond. Traditionally, a father doesn't serve as best man for his son, it's usually a brother or close friend. The significance of what he was asking wasn't lost on me. "I know it's not conventional," David continued when I didn't immediately answer, "but nothing about our relationship has been conventional. And there's no one else I'd rather have standing beside me." I swallowed hard against the tightness in my throat. "I would be honored," I managed finally. "More than you can know." He nodded, satisfaction and relief evident in his face. "Good, that's good." Another silence fell between us, but it was the comfortable silence of two people who no longer need constant words to affirm their connection. "I've been thinking a lot about forgiveness lately," David said eventually, his gaze on the deepening twilight, "about how complicated it is. It's the work of a lifetime." I agree. Forgiving others, forgiving ourselves. "I've forgiven Mom," he said softly. "Not completely, not all at once, but in pieces, a little more each time I see her. She's different, now more honest, more vulnerable." "I'm glad," I said, and meant it. Despite everything, I didn't wish Laura ill. Her actions had caused immense pain, but holding on to anger would only perpetuate that pain. "I've been working on forgiving myself too," David continued, "for believing the lies, for cutting you out so completely, for saying those things to you that day in the restaurant." I turned to him, wishing I could somehow absorb the pain I still heard in his voice. David, you were systematically manipulated by the two people you trusted most in the world. What happened wasn't your fault. I know that intellectually, but emotionally, he shook his head. I still have dreams sometimes where I'm saying those awful things to you again. I wake up feeling sick, with regret. We can't change the past, I said gently. We can only decide what to do with the present. He nodded, then asked the question I sensed had been on his mind for some time. Have you forgiven them? Mom and Robert. I considered the question carefully, owing him complete honesty. Robert, no. Maybe someday, but not yet. Your mother. I paused, organizing my thoughts. I've let go of the act of anger. I understand that what she did came from her own pain, but full forgiveness, I'm still working on. And me? He asked, so quietly I almost didn't hear him. Have you forgiven me? I turned to face him fully, needing him to see the truth in my eyes. There was never anything to forgive, son. You were a victim in all this, just as I was. Perhaps more so, because you were robbed of the truth itself. His eyes glistened in the fading light. 3 years, Dad. 3 years we lost. But we have now, I reminded him gently. And tomorrow? And all the days after that? From inside the house came the sound of laughter. Melissa and Emma, the future and the past, both part of our healing present. You know what I've learned from all this? David said after another moment of reflection. The truth always finds a way to the surface, no matter how deeply it's buried. Like water, I agree. It always finds a path, and love too, I think. He looked at me, the boy I'd lost and the man I'd found again. It finds a way back, even through the darkest places. As twilight deepened into evening, Melissa and Emma joined us outside with coffee and the pie they'd picked up on their way over. Our conversation shifted to lighter topics: wedding plan, Emma's new job, Melissa's stories from the pediatric ward. Normal family talk, precious in its ordinary. Later, as David and Melissa prepared to leave, my son pulled me into a tight embrace, something that had once been awkward between us but now felt natural, necessary. Same time next week, he asked as they headed toward their car. Wouldn't miss it, I promise. I stood in the driveway watching until their taillights disappeared around the corner, a ritual I'd developed over the past year. Each time they left, a small part of me still feared it might be the last time I saw the man. Echo of the trauma we'd all endured. But they always came back. That was the miracle, the gift I never took for granted. Inside, I added their dinner plates to my collection, the growing evidence of Sunday meals, birthday celebrations, impromptu weeknight visits. Each plate represented another thread rewoven into the fabric of our relationship, another small step in our shared healing. That night, as I often did, I added a new entry to the journal I'd started keeping after our reconciliation. Today, David asked me to be his best man. Tonight, he talked about forgiveness. The journey back to each other continued, step by step, truth by truth, Sunday dinner by Sunday dinner. We are finding our way. My son is getting married in October. I will stand beside him as he begins this new chapter of his life, not as a ghost from his past, but as a living, loving presence in his present. After everything, after the betrayal and the pain, after the lies and the loss, after the confrontation and the truth, there is this healing. Not perfect, not complete, but real and ongoing. Preciso me afastar. Nunca mais fale comigo. Those were the words that ended everything 3 years ago. But they didn't end everything after all. They were just part of the journey that somehow, against all odds, led us back to each other. And for that, I am eternally grateful. I closed the journal and looked at the family photo newly framed on my nightstand. David, Melissa, Emma, and me, taken at a baseball game last month, all of us smiling, genuine smiles that reached our eyes. A new family constellation formed from the remnants of the old one. Not perfect, not unmarked by the past, but real and present and full of promise for the future. After 3 years of darkness, the light had returned, and it was more than enough.